Hello and welcome to a special edition of Spectator TV. I'm Katie Balls and I'm joined by James Forsyth. And we've just had the fourth ballot of the Tory leadership contest when it comes to the parliamentary rounds. And the results were that Kemi Badenoch has been knocked out. She won 59 votes, which put her in fourth place. So she has left the contest. In third place was Liz Truss on 86 votes. In second was Penny Mordaunt on 92 votes. And in first place was Rishi Sunak on 118, which is the 120, they would guarantee you a place in the final two. Now, we only have to wait till tomorrow afternoon to find out the final results, of which two will go to the membership. But to discuss what we currently know and what to expect in the next 24 hours and beyond, I will now turn to James. James, what struck you most about those results?
So Liz Truss is now in single digits of Penny Mordaunt, 6 votes away, and she will be, I think, fairly confident that she can pick up considerably more of Kemi Badenoch's vote than Penny Mordaunt can. So I think Liz Truss's chances of making the final two have increased quite significantly after, I think, what was generally regarded as a disappointing result for her last night. I think the other thing that strikes me is that Kemi Badenoch is out, and as you've called this from the start of this contest, she has been the kind of the breakout star of the race. She is someone who has gone from a junior ministerial role to still being in this race when cabinet ministers are out of it, and I think it's also particularly impressive because she stood her campaign up in a matter of days. There are some other people. If you think of, I think it was no surprise to anyone in Westminster when Tom Tugendhat ran or Penny Mordaunt ran, but Kemi Badenoch, I don't think anyone was expecting her to run. She's been a surprise figure in this race, and she has had a remarkably successful run to get this far. Now, Liz Truss's supporters have called on Kemi Badenoch now for days now to drop out, allow Liz Truss to unite the right. The question now, I suppose, is how much ill will is there from those calls on her, from her and her supporters, from those calls for her to drop out, and how successfully can Liz Truss do that? My guess is she will do it successfully enough to make it onto that ballot paper.
Now, let's go straight away to a few questions and do send them in. And we also have discussion points for one another, which is ultimately, here's one. Speaking of Kemi Badenoch, we have a question from GP, which is, what's Kemi Badenoch's future in the party? James, it seems like a safe bet that she is going to be promoted to a cabinet role after this, no?
Yeah, I think it is. I also think that, I felt throughout this contest, and you said very similar, Katie, that if this contest was taking place with the Tories out of power, she would have won, because there has been a kind of David Cameron-like quality to the campaign, and with those 5 years in opposition, that would have given her, I think, enough time for people to feel that she was ready. I think the obstacle to Kemi Badenoch was, could you really imagine her 6 weeks from now walking through the black door of number 10 and having to be Prime Minister? But she has clearly established herself as a major figure in the party and someone who is clearly hugely popular with the voluntary party too.
Now, following on from that question from Martin, which is, who will Michael Gove now support? Now, of course, Michael Gove was one of Kemi Badenoch's early backers. And at the time when Michael Gove came out for Kemi Badenoch, I think there was some surprise in certain quarters, given that Michael Gove is such an experienced minister. His endorsement would have been very helpful to different campaigns. And there's also some conspiracies. So there were figures who, I think Steve Baker vocalised it, but there were lots of MPs saying this. Effectively, they thought Kemi Badenoch was a Michael Gove plant, and it was a way to split the right and then eventually fold in behind Rishi Sunak. So what's your money on in terms of what Michael Gove will do next? Do you think he's going to come out and formally endorse another candidate? Do you think he's going to stay quiet? Do you think he's going to stir from the sidelines? I think
trying to predict what Michael Gove will do in a leadership contest, as someone who'd written the whole cover story on the Boris Gove campaign, only for it to be exploded in 2016 on the Thursday morning, is a hard thing to do. You're clearly right that it was when Michael Gove, her Secretary of State, came out and said, I think Kemi Badenoch should be Prime Minister, it made her candidacy instantly more serious, that someone with his governing experience was saying, actually, this person who works for me in my department is the best choice, gave it a real boost. And that, and also I think within the dynamics of this race, particularly because that stood in contrast to the criticisms that Anne-Marie Trevelyan, Penny Mordaunt's boss, was making of her, previously in private and then yesterday in public, as what you described as a drive-by. And so I think we wait to see what Michael Gove does. And I think Michael Gove is rarely predictable. I think he knows all the remaining three candidates well. Liz Truss was one of his junior ministers when he was at Education. They are the two longest serving cabinet ministers. He obviously worked for Rishi Sunak closely, and Penny Mordaunt was a junior minister of his at the cabinet office.
Do you think Michael Gove would endorse Liz Truss? I mean, they're often at different ends of the argument, really, aren't they? The arguments over trade deals, Australian trade deals. I mean, there are some who say that Michael Gove is in what Truss's team or her supporters describe as the axis of evil.
Yeah, but I mean, there's always been a funny, from her defence of wood-burning Goves, as she put it, there's always been a kind of funny friendship between them despite their ideological differences. So I wouldn't rule anything out.
One to watch. Why did Rishi Sunak pick up so few votes? So if we look at the exact figures, Rishi Sunak, as we point out, so he won 115 votes in the third ballot, so that was yesterday, and today he was on 118 votes. Now, the reason that is quite surprising is that he only gained 3 votes, and given it was Tom Tugendhat's supporters who were out to get, I think there was a sense that he would find it easier to take from those. But in a sign of how confusing this contest was, he made quite a big jump between the second and the third rounds from 101 to 115. And that's when it was Suella Braverman's supporters who were technically up for grabs. So, James, do you think it's not as simple as people... we're not necessarily just seeing the supporters of the camp that's fallen out moving. There could be more going on?
I think one of the things that is very interesting is how all the candidates are their number of publicly declared supporters is quite far below the vote shares they're getting, which is strange. You would think that by this point, if you were voting for people, you would be declaring. I think what hurt Rishi Sunak in this round was a sense that all the action was elsewhere on the ballot. And I think that means that, that causes you a problem in a contest if people feel that, that very close, there weren't that many votes separating second, third and fourth. That sense that that's where the action was. One Kemi Badenoch supporter just messaged me saying they think that what happened was that they lost some to Liz, so that while they gained some from Tom, they were squeezed down by the Truss campaign, who basically said to people, look, if you don't come round, the right is not going to have, the right in inverted commas, is not going to have a candidate in the final 2 because Penny will be so far ahead of Liz. So I think there are all sorts of things going on here. I think the one thing that I think is what I would say with relative certainty is I don't think any camp is in a position to be trying to kind of manipulate things by moving votes here and moving votes there. I think it is much more that you've got these kind of independent cross currents of, people want to bolster this person or bolster that person. Or I think that, and I think it is an interesting question here, well, did some people who were backing Kemi Badenoch suddenly think, oh, well, I don't think she's going to make the final 2, but I don't want it to be a Rishi Sunak Penny Mordaunt contest. Sorry.
Okay, so then, James, effectively right now we have a situation where actually it's feasible that you could have any of the current 3 as the final 2. Yeah. Penny Mordaunt versus Liz Truss. It's possible. Rishi Sunak is not at 120 yet. And again, Penny Mordaunt could still come out triumphant. But it does feel as though Liz Truss is gaining momentum and Rishi Sunak only needs a little bit to get over the line. Now, looking at some of the other questions, there's a lot of disappointment in the chat when it comes to the fact that Kemi Badenoch has been knocked out. Looking at some of the grassroots polling, effectively there's a YouGov poll today suggesting Kemi Badenoch would beat every group when it comes to any candidate when it came to the final two. So do you think there could be a bit of a backlash to the fact that MPs have chosen not to put her in the final two, despite all the polling in recent days suggesting that the membership did want her there?
I think that the easiest way to sell out an event at Tory party conference in October would be to put Kemi Badenoch on the panel. She is clearly hugely popular. I think that there will be disappointed members that she has not reached that final round. One supporter of Liz Truss was arguing to me yesterday, but it was the MP's job to knock Kemi Badenoch out because she didn't have enough experience to be Prime Minister, and so she shouldn't be put in front of the members. I'm not sure that all the members will buy that argument. They would like to make that decision for themselves, I suspect. But I think that the question now is, where does that Badenoch vote go? How much of it, we discuss this endlessly, how much of her vote in terms of MPs can she transfer if she chooses to endorse anyone, which I don't think is certain? And also, if she chooses to back someone, does that candidate benefit from the energy, enthusiasm that she has generated in this contest?
And we will be back with all the twists and turns in there. I think at this point, we're going to leave it there. So do join us for the next one of these when it comes to the leadership contest. And with that, thank you to James and thank you to Max, our producer. We look forward to seeing you again.